Tyler thought he had it all: a loving wife, a baby on the way, and a picture-perfect future. But one wrong turn changed everything. What he saw through a cafe window shattered his world, and instead of confronting the betrayal, he played the long game and delivered a legal revenge that no one saw coming. Every morning, like clockwork, Tyler Raines left his suburban Nashville home at 7:12 a.m. He and his wife, Madison, had their routine down to seconds. He went south to his engineering job. She headed north to the medical clinic where she worked as an administrator. No drama, no delays, just two professionals living an efficient life. Their house was strategically chosen, halfway between both jobs. It was never about charm or curb appeal. It was about logistics. Everything about their life made sense. They didn't argue much. They had checklists instead: dinner twice a week with friends, gym on Thursdays, movie nights on Saturdays. Trying for a baby had been the latest project: timed ovulation tests, vitamin packs, clean diets. That Thursday morning, Tyler's phone buzzed while he was still within city limits. It was Chris, his oldest friend, stuck with a dead car battery and on the verge of missing a critical meeting. Tyler hesitated, just for a second, but then turned his car around. Friendship had its own obligations, after all. As he cut across downtown, a flash of motion caught his eye through a cafe window. He almost didn't look, but something made him slow down. There she was, Madison, sitting at a small table, laughing, leaning in just slightly. Across from her sat Charles Whitman, her boss. Tall, dark suit, no coffee in his hand, just a wallet on the table. He was paying the bill, as if their meeting was wrapping up. Tyler pulled over so fast the driver behind him laid on the horn, but he didn't care. He parked half on a side street, barely glancing at the curb. His brain was buzzing, trying to make sense of what he'd seen. It could have been a work breakfast. It could have been innocent, but it wasn't. Not with the way Charles touched her wrist. Not with the way she smiled, open, unguarded. The kind of smile she used to give Tyler before things got procedural. He got out of the car and walked toward the cafe. The closer he got, the more his heartbeat betrayed him. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It was something colder. Instinct, maybe, like his gut already knew. When he opened the door, the bell above it chimed like a siren. Charles was standing, folding a receipt into his wallet. Madison's head snapped up. For a split second, she looked like she didn't recognize him. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice higher than usual. Tyler didn't answer immediately. He took in the scene. Two coffee cups, half-finished scones, her hand still resting near where Charles had touched it. He explained he was helping Chris with his car, said he happened to be driving by and noticed her. That's all. Madison tried to smile, but it was frayed at the edges. Charles stepped forward, extended a hand with an easy grin. "Good to see you, Tyler. Didn't expect to run into you here." Tyler shook it, barely. No expression, no accusation. He nodded, turned around, and left. He still drove Chris to work, still made it through the rest of the day. But inside, something had shifted. The image of Madison laughing in that cafe was burned into his mind. And it wasn't the touch or the smile that haunted him most. It was the familiarity. At home that night, everything looked normal. Too normal. Madison had made his favorite dinner. The table was set with their rarely used china. There was wine. She was in a dress he hadn't seen in a long time. He played along, ate, listened to her small talk, answered with nods and short words. But every moment felt like it had been staged in advance. Then she dropped the news. She was pregnant. Tyler froze. For a moment his mind blanked, then flickered with joy. They had been trying for so long. Dozens of tests, endless appointments. For a second he was happy. Then Charles's face reappeared in his mind. The timing, the way she smiled that morning, the unexplained meeting. Still, he smiled. Said it was amazing news. Let her cry into his shoulder. Held her loosely, careful not to hold her too close. That night he barely slept. The next morning, while they stood by the coffee maker, he asked casually about Charles, about the meeting. She blinked, paused, then explained she'd gone to tell him about the pregnancy. She needed to ask for a raise, she said. The hug? Just a reaction of support. Tyler nodded slowly, like it made sense. But the question had already planted itself deep inside him. If I'm the father, why was I the second to know? After that morning's conversation, Tyler felt like he was living on two timelines, one for the world and one for himself. Outwardly, he was the proud soon-to-be father, excited, helpful, involved. At home, he did everything a man in his position should: read books on parenting, made healthy meals, painted the nursery walls with care. He didn't miss a single appointment. Friends told Madison she was lucky, and she agreed, but Tyler was performing. Behind the routine, every smile came with a calculation. Every touch had a weight behind it. He kept a mental file of small details. When Madison's mood shifted, how often she messaged at night, how often Charles's name came up, or didn't. He wanted to believe her. He tried, but the truth had a way of seeping in through the cracks. One night, halfway through her second trimester, they were picking baby names. Madison threw out a few, and Tyler joked that one sounded like someone who'd already made partner at a law firm. She laughed. He didn't. "Do you think he'll look like you?" she asked, smiling. Tyler nodded but said nothing, because in his head the question had already flipped. He wondered if the child would look like Charles. Noah was born 7 weeks later, healthy, quiet, with a soft cry that silenced Tyler's thoughts for a while. Holding him for the first time was overwhelming and real. There was no performance in that moment, just love. Whatever doubts he'd had were forced into the background. A baby doesn't ask to be born, he told himself, and this one didn't deserve to pay for what wasn't his fault. Those early weeks were intense. Sleepless nights, endless feedings. Tyler threw himself into fatherhood. He found peace in routines: bottle prep, diaper changes, walks to calm Noah down. The baby slept best on his chest. That meant something, right? But time passed, and so did denial. Around the 3-month mark, the questions started creeping back in, not through anger but through observation. Noah's features were developing, and Tyler began to notice the differences. Subtle things: jawline, nose, eyes. None of them looked like his. Family and friends avoided making comments. Some said the baby would grow into it. Others avoided the topic completely. But Tyler saw the resemblance to someone else, a face he hadn't seen since that morning in the cafe. He didn't say anything to Madison. There was no way to bring it up without detonating everything. So he kept watching, looking for signs, waiting. He found himself scrolling through old photos, his baby pictures, Madison's, even Charles's, after a long night of clicking through online staff directories. He hated himself for it, but he couldn't stop. He started sleeping in shorter intervals, sometimes on the couch, sometimes in his car, parked just down the street, engine off, mind racing. One night he drove all the way to a 24-hour pharmacy just to look at DNA test kits. He didn't buy one. Back at home, things felt normal again. Too normal. Madison was affectionate, even grateful. She leaned into the bond they'd created during pregnancy. She thanked him for being so involved. He played the role well. But love without trust becomes survival, and that's where he lived. He told himself over and over, if you love this child, maybe the truth doesn't matter. But it did, because love built on a lie is still a lie, and he needed to know. He decided not to go behind Madison's back. One evening, after Noah had gone to sleep, he asked her to talk. She smiled, expecting something light, but Tyler's face didn't match her mood. "Is there anything," he asked, "anything at all you need to tell me?" She tilted her head, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, is there something you've been holding back?" She shook her head. "Tyler, no. Why are you asking this?" He didn't yell. He didn't even raise his voice. He just kept his eyes on hers and said, "Noah doesn't look like me." She froze. Her face tensed for a second. "Babies change," she said. "Maybe, but you know what I'm asking." He said Charles's name. That was it. Her whole body changed, like she'd been hit with something she didn't see coming. She didn't deny it immediately. She didn't cry right away. She just stood there, frozen. When the tears came, they came hard. She gripped the edge of the counter like it was the only thing holding her up. "It happened once," she whispered. "Just once. During that conference in Charleston. We'd both been drinking. It was a mistake. A terrible mistake. Tyler stood still, his jaw clenched, but he didn't lash out. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, barely above a whisper. "I wanted to," she said. "But then the test came back positive, and I just prayed it was yours. I was scared, Tyler. I was scared you'd leave. I couldn't bear the idea of losing you." He looked at her like she was a stranger. "You had months, 9 months before he was born, and a year after." She stepped forward, reaching for his arm. He stepped back. "I need to be sure," he said. "I'm doing the test." Madison didn't fight him on it. She just nodded, wiped her face, and walked away. A few nights later, Tyler waited until Noah was asleep. He gently swabbed the baby's cheek, placed the sample in the envelope, and dropped it off at a private lab. Then he waited. Every day felt like a countdown to a verdict he already knew. The test results arrived on a Thursday, a plain envelope, no ceremony, just numbers and a conclusion Tyler already suspected. Probability of paternity, 0%. He sat down on the garage floor, envelope still in his hands. The concrete was cold, but he didn't move. It wasn't just the result. It was everything that came with it. The birthdays, the appointments, the hundreds of diapers, the lullabies, the promises, all of it based on someone else's child. He felt hollow, not angry, not even shocked, just emptied. When he finally stood up, his legs were numb. Inside the house, the TV was on low. Madison had fallen asleep on the couch, Noah in his crib. Tyler didn't wake her. He walked into the baby's room and stood there quietly. Noah shifted in his sleep. Tyler reached out and rested his hand on the child's chest, feeling the tiny rhythmic breath. The bond was real. The love was real. The DNA wasn't. He didn't sleep that night. He didn't say anything the next morning either. He waited until Madison walked into the kitchen. Her face was tired, like she hadn't slept well either. Then her eyes landed on the envelope sitting on the table. "Did the results come back?" she asked. Tyler nodded. She didn't reach for it. She didn't even pretend. She just sat down and stared at the floor. Then slowly she began to talk. "I didn't know for sure. I wanted to believe it was yours. I convinced myself it had to be. I told myself it was a one-time mistake, and it didn't matter if I just moved forward." Tyler didn't interrupt. "I thought if I could be a good wife again, a good mom, it would make it okay." "You had chances," he said. "So many chances." Madison nodded. "I know." There was no fight, no shouting, just the steady collapse of something that had taken years to build. Tyler walked upstairs, pulled out a backpack he'd packed the night before. Clothes, documents, wallet. He came back down, slung it over his shoulder, and looked at her one last time. "I'm leaving now," he said. "I'll come back another day to get the rest." She didn't try to stop him. He went straight to a hotel. That night he lay on the bed staring at the ceiling. His phone stayed on airplane mode. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just stayed still, processing the shape of a future that now looked completely different. The next day he called a lawyer, an old college friend who had moved into family law years ago. They met in a small office across town. Tyler laid out everything: the affair, the timeline, the pregnancy, the test results. He brought documents, receipts, photos. The lawyer listened without interrupting, then said plainly, "You have a case, a strong one." There were grounds for legal action: fraud, emotional harm, parental alienation. And because Charles was Madison's superior, there was also potential for an additional suit: workplace misconduct and abuse of authority. The fact that Madison had concealed the paternity and allowed Tyler to act as father under false pretenses gave them leverage, especially if financial resources had been used under that belief. Tyler didn't hesitate. "File both." The lawyer asked if he had evidence of the relationship beyond the confession. Tyler gave him access to old text messages, joint receipts from travel conferences, a list of nights Madison had stayed late at work. It was circumstantial, but paired with the DNA test, it painted a clear picture. Within days, both lawsuits were filed, one against Madison for personal damages, one against Charles in the clinic for professional misconduct. Then the story leaked. No one knew how, but someone got access to the court filings. Maybe a paralegal, maybe someone at the clerk's office. It started in local forums, then spread fast. Headlines popped up. Engineer discovers baby isn't his after DNA test. Clinic supervisor impregnates employee, faces lawsuit. Some sites blurred names, others didn't bother. The fallout was immediate. Madison was fired. The clinic launched an internal investigation. Charles was suspended pending review by the state medical board. Public pressure forced the board to freeze his license temporarily. Madison's social life collapsed overnight. Friends she'd known for years stopped calling. Some blocked her outright. Even her own family pulled back. Tyler, on the other hand, was flooded with attention. Reporters, influencers, even podcast invites. He turned down everything. He didn't want to be a viral story. He just wanted his life back. Through all of it, he never missed a single court date. He sat through depositions, hearings, mediations, always quiet, always composed. The courtroom wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. Months later, when the judge finally delivered the verdict, the room was silent. Madison was found liable for emotional fraud and psychological harm. Charles was deemed to have violated workplace ethics and contributed to a hostile work environment. Tyler was awarded $750,000 in compensation, along with a formal referral to the ethics board for Charles, one that could result in permanent license revocation. Tyler didn't react. He didn't smile. He simply signed the documents and walked out. That night, he returned to the house one last time, not to speak, not to forgive, just to see Noah. The boy was asleep, arms above his head, mouth open slightly. Tyler approached quietly. Noah stirred, blinked, and smiled. "Daddy," he said. Tyler's heart cracked in half. He knelt beside the crib, rested a hand on Noah's chest, and whispered, "You'll always be loved, but I need to go." Then he left, carrying the weight of a truth no man ever wants to face, and the strength to walk forward anyway. Tyler moved into a short-term rental across town, a one-bedroom place near a park. Quiet, anonymous, no framed photos, no toys on the floor. Just space, something he hadn't had in a long time. He didn't change his phone number, but he didn't respond to messages either. Madison reached out twice, once by text, once by email. Neither got a reply. His parents called, offering support, a place to stay, anything he needed. He thanked them, but stayed put. What he wanted most was silence. The media attention didn't die down immediately. After the court verdict, the story resurfaced online with new intensity. Local outlets published follow-up pieces, framing Tyler as a symbol of quiet strength and moral clarity. People began calling it the DNA divorce case. Reddit threads dissected it. Podcasts speculated about Madison's motives. Even some morning shows referenced it as a cautionary tale. Tyler avoided all of it. At work, his team shielded him from questions. His supervisor offered time off. He declined. He needed routine. Code made sense. Spreadsheets didn't lie. Unlike people. Back at the clinic, fallout hit fast. Charles's professional license remained under review by the state medical board. While he hadn't yet been officially disbarred, his suspension was indefinite. His career was effectively over. Clients pulled away. Public trust collapsed. Madison, once respected and liked by her colleagues, was now a cautionary tale whispered behind closed doors. She moved out of their shared home and back in with her sister. Her professional network thinned. Every job interview ended with polite rejection emails. It was like her resume carried a warning label. Noah stayed with her. Tyler didn't challenge that. Not legally, not publicly. The court acknowledged he had no biological connection to the child, and Tyler didn't push for custody. He hadn't even discussed visitation, not yet, but he thought about it constantly. He remembered every detail. Noah's grip on his finger, the sleepy mumble of Dada, the way the boy calmed when he heard his voice. None of that had changed. Biology couldn't erase it. Still, he stayed away. The lawyer called to confirm the financial transfer had gone through, $750,000. Madison didn't contest it. She couldn't afford to. Between public pressure and legal leverage, there was no room to negotiate. Tyler received the funds in full. He didn't touch the money for weeks, not out of guilt, but because no dollar amount could balance what had been lost. Eventually, he used part of it to pay off his remaining debts, made a donation to a support group for men recovering from paternity fraud, and set the rest aside. Not for revenge, for rebuilding. Despite everything, There were no celebrations. Tyler didn't post any victory speeches, no photos, no public statements. He turned down every interview request, even the ones that offered compensation. The only thing he wanted was to disappear from the story people told. Still, he was reminded everywhere. In grocery stores, strangers nodded at him in quiet recognition. At gas stations, people offered support. "Good for you, man," they'd say. Took guts to walk away. Others tried to hand him business cards. A few asked for selfies. He never got used to it. The hardest reminders came at night, when the noise faded and the quiet returned. That's when the questions hit hardest. What if he had done the test sooner? What if he had confronted Madison the day of the cafe? What if he had fought to stay in Noah's life? That last one kept him up most. He missed the boy's voice, missed the sound of him padding across the hardwood floor, missed the weight of his head on his chest. He never stopped loving Noah, but he also couldn't pretend anymore. One Sunday afternoon, months after the final court date, he drove back to the old neighborhood. Not to the house, just near it. Parked at the corner, engine off. He saw someone walk into what used to be his front yard. A woman, not Madison. The house had sold. Everything he'd built was now someone else's story. He turned the key and left. Later that week, he received a letter. A real one. No sender name on the envelope, just a Nashville postmark. Inside was a folded sheet of paper with handwriting he recognized. It was from Madison. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't beg. The letter was short. She said she understood why he left. Said she had watched Noah play with the toy train Tyler had bought, and it had made her cry. She included a recent photo. Noah on the floor, train in hand, smiling. At the bottom, just one line. "If you ever want to see him, you'd be welcome." Tyler read it 3 times, then placed the letter in a drawer. Not because he'd made a decision, but because he hadn't. He kept working, kept healing, kept moving forward. But the door now wasn't completely closed. Tyler didn't respond to Madison's letter right away. Weeks passed. He returned to his job, joined a local gym, started volunteering once a month with a fatherhood outreach group. Just something to do with his hands and heart that didn't involve spreadsheets or legal documents. But the photo stayed with him. Noah sitting cross-legged on the floor, holding the same wooden train Tyler had given him for his first birthday. The smile was small, familiar. Tyler had seen it before, on early mornings and long, quiet nights. It hadn't changed. He placed the letter in a drawer, then took it out the next day, and again the day after that. Eventually, he stopped putting it away. He didn't talk about it with anyone. Not his lawyer, not his parents, not Chris. The decision was his to make, and he didn't want opinions. 3 months after the court ruling, he sent a reply. Short, direct. "If Noah asks about me, you can tell him I'm open to seeing him, but only if it's for him, not for you, and not because it's convenient." There was no signature, just a return address. He received a response 2 days later. A time, a place, a park on the east side of town. Late morning, when the weather would be warm and the playground mostly empty. Tyler arrived early. He didn't know what to expect. He felt foolish for being nervous. Noah was just a toddler. There would be no complicated questions, no demands, but still, he was anxious. Madison arrived on time. She nodded, said hello quietly, then stepped aside. Noah ran toward the sandbox, oblivious. Tyler followed slowly, giving the moment time to breathe. He didn't force it, didn't try to pick him up or call his name. He just sat nearby. After a few minutes, Noah turned, looked at him, and paused. Then he walked over, held up a toy truck, and said, "Want to play?" Tyler didn't answer. He just nodded. They sat in the sand for nearly an hour. No drama, no explanations. Just toys, small talk, and the kind of unspoken bond that doesn't ask for permission. That afternoon changed something. Tyler didn't rush into a routine, but he started showing up more often. Parks, lunch dates, weekend mornings. Madison kept her distance, didn't interfere. They barely spoke. And that was fine with him. He didn't want to reclaim a title. He wasn't trying to relive something that was gone. He just wanted to be present for the boy who still called him Dad. Legally, he had no rights, but emotionally, he had history. And with each visit, that connection grew stronger. Over time, Noah started asking questions. small ones at first. Where do you live? Why don't you stay for dinner? Tyler answered what he could, always keeping it simple, always honest. Eventually, he told him, I'm someone who loves you very much, and I always will. Noah nodded. It was enough. The public attention faded, as all viral stories eventually do. New scandals replaced old ones. Charles disappeared from the headlines completely. Madison found part-time work in a smaller clinic outside the city. Her name no longer triggered reactions at the grocery store. Tyler's life moved on too. He traveled, made new friends, started dating again, slowly, cautiously. But something had changed in him. Not broken, just recalibrated. He no longer chased perfection. He valued presence over performance. He'd been betrayed in a way few people could imagine. But he'd also walked away with clarity, self-respect, and a refusal to let pain define him. One spring afternoon, nearly a year after the test results, he sat with Noah at a community fair. The boy was eating ice cream, legs swinging off the bench, telling a story about a class pet. Tyler wasn't listening to every word. He was just watching, taking it in, not trying to solve anything or make sense of the past, just being there. Before they left, Noah tugged on his arm and asked, Are you coming next time? Always, Tyler said, and he meant it. That night, Tyler returned home, sat in the quiet of his apartment, and opened a new email draft. Subject, Closure 2, Madison Body. Thank you for not standing in the way. We're all doing the best we can. Let's keep it that way. He hit send. Then he closed his laptop and turned off the lights. There were still hard days. There always would be. But he'd found his way through, not with revenge, not with anger, but with truth, boundaries, and the will to keep showing up.